For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. The hidden message in Ezekiel's vision. What if one of the most shocking and controversial prophecies in the Bible isn't about the end times, the Antichrist, or even the second coming of Christ, but about something far stranger? What if it's about something the church has quietly avoided for centuries? Something not of this earth. I'm talking about UFOs. Yes, unidentified flying objects, or what many now call UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. It sounds absurd at first, like a bad science fiction script mixed with religion. But take a closer look. Ancient prophets, seers, and mystics describe beings descending from the skies, surrounded by fire and light. They wrote about heavenly chariots that glowed, moved against the wind, and defied all known laws of nature. These were not dreams. These were recorded visions, prophecies, events. One of the most striking examples comes from the Old Testament, from a prophet named Ezekiel. In Ezekiel chapter 1, the prophet recounts a vision so bizarre, it continues to baffle theologians and scholars to this day. He describes a storm cloud coming from the north, flashing with lightning and filled with a brilliant light. Within this whirlwind, he sees 4 living creatures, each with 4 faces and wings, and beside them, massive glimmering wheels that could move in any direction. These wheels sparkled like topaz, and within them, Ezekiel saw a wheel within a wheel. Now, pause and consider. What ancient human would use the phrase, wheel within a wheel, unless he was trying to describe something mechanical, something that rotated independently, perhaps like the inner and outer discs of a modern gyroscopic engine? The creatures, the glowing lights, the sound of rushing winds, the fire, and the mobility of this craft, it's all there. Some researchers and ancient astronaut theorists have boldly stated that Ezekiel may have witnessed a flying machine piloted by beings not from Earth. And it begs the question, if a modern person saw this today, would they call it divine, or would they call it a UFO? And yet, despite the uncanny similarities, mainstream Christian doctrine insists Ezekiel's vision was purely symbolic, meant to illustrate God's power or majesty. But what if it wasn't just a symbol? What if the vision was literal, and Ezekiel was describing the best he could with the limited vocabulary of his time? That brings us to a critical question. Why doesn't the church acknowledge this possibility? Forbidden texts and the Vatican's silence. To understand that silence, we must turn our attention to what the church doesn't say, or more importantly, what it deliberately hides. Over the centuries, the church has curated what books belong in the Bible and which do not. And one of the most mysterious and controversial omissions is the Book of Enoch. This ancient Hebrew text, once widely read in early Judeo-Christian communities, describes a world where divine beings, called watchers, descended from the heavens. These watchers didn't just observe, they interacted. They taught humanity secret knowledge, metalworking, astrology, sorcery. They even mated with human women, producing a hybrid race known as the Nephilim. These Nephilim were giants, warriors, and according to the text, they corrupted the earth. This corruption, Enoch writes, was one of the main reasons for the Great Flood. Now, pause. Beings from the sky, bringing advanced knowledge, altering human genetics and creating hybrids? This doesn't just sound like a religious allegory. It reads like an ancient record of contact. Why was this book removed from canon? Because it doesn't fit neatly into the church's teachings about angels, demons, and divine order. The Book of Enoch blurs the line between heaven and space, between angels and something more technological. It suggests that humanity has been influenced, perhaps even manipulated, by non-human intelligences for thousands of years. But it's not just the Book of Enoch. There are countless apocryphal texts, gospels, and mystical writings that the Church has buried or dismissed. And in Rome, beneath the surface of the Vatican, lies a vast archive known only to a few. The Vatican Secret Archives, as they're called, stretch over 50 miles of shelving. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's official record. Inside are thousands of texts, manuscripts, and documents the public will never see. Some date back over 1,000 years. Some are so secretive that only select scholars are allowed in, with written permission from the Pope himself. What's in them? We can't say for sure, but many believe these archives contain ancient knowledge, lost histories, forgotten scriptures, and possibly records of contact. If prophets like Ezekiel and Enoch witnessed what we today would describe as UFOs, wouldn't the Vatican want to control how that narrative unfolds? Especially if it could unravel centuries of doctrine. The Vatican and the stars. But here's where things take a strange turn. In the modern era, the Vatican hasn't stayed silent. In fact, it's taken a quiet but significant interest in the stars. Did you know that the Vatican owns an astronomical observatory? Actually, it owns two. One of them, known as the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, is located in the mountains of Arizona, one of the top UAP hotspot regions in the world. It's equipped with some of the most advanced infrared optics available. Why would a religious institution invest so heavily in space observation? The answer, surprisingly, may be hiding in plain sight. The former head of the Vatican Observatory, Father Jose Gabriel Funes, made headlines when he said the belief in extraterrestrial life doesn't contradict Catholic theology. He even stated that extraterrestrials are our brothers. That's not fringe speculation. That's a top-ranking Jesuit astronomer working directly under the Pope, preparing the faithful for a cosmic paradigm shift. Why now? Governments around the world, especially the United States, have begun slowly releasing evidence about UFOs. The Pentagon has declassified footage of objects moving at impossible speeds. Navy pilots have testified about daily encounters with craft that defy physics. In recent congressional hearings, officials have admitted to retrieving non-human biologics from crash sites. The language has shifted. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is disclosure. And the Vatican, perhaps more than any other religious authority, knows what's coming. The Church doesn't fear knowledge. It fears chaos. It fears losing its narrative. Because if humanity learns that we're not alone, if we discover that angels, demons, and even God's messengers were misinterpreted extraterrestrials, what happens to faith? Or maybe faith expands. The prophecy and the return of the watchers. Let's return to Scripture. In Matthew 24:37, Jesus says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." So what was it like in the days of Noah? According to the Book of Enoch, it was an era when the Watchers descended from the heavens, altered human DNA, introduced forbidden knowledge, and disrupted the divine order. The result? A global cataclysm, the Great Flood, sent to wipe the slate clean. And now, some say history is repeating itself. Look at the signs. Humanity is experimenting with genetic modification, artificial intelligence, and quantum technologies that could easily attract the attention of other intelligences. UAP sightings are skyrocketing. Military disclosures are becoming normalized. And spiritually, we are seeing a mass awakening. More people than ever are questioning what lies beyond this physical world. Could the Watchers be returning? Could the church be preparing for another event? One so disruptive, it must be tightly controlled. Here's the unsettling idea. Perhaps the return of the Son of Man is not just a religious event, but a cosmic one. Perhaps what's returning is not just a Messiah, but a presence, a force, a non-human intelligence. And maybe that's why the church has been so quiet. Because the prophecy isn't about a war on earth. It's about a revelation from the stars. If that's true, then the message of Ezekiel, of Enoch, and even of Revelation begins to look less like fantasy and more like preparation. The veil may soon be lifted. Faith and science don't need to be enemies. In fact, they might be two sides of the same coin. Both are quests for truth. Both ask us to look beyond ourselves. The danger isn't in believing aliens or angels. The danger is in refusing to question the stories we've been told, especially when those stories were edited, redacted, and repackaged by institutions more concerned with control than enlightenment. So ask yourself, why would the church hide a prophecy about UFOs? Maybe the better question is, why wouldn't they? Ancient texts speak of beings from the sky. Modern governments are beginning to confirm it, and spiritual seekers everywhere are feeling that something is coming. Are we truly alone, or have we always been watched? Maybe the answer was never hidden at all. Maybe it was just waiting for the right time. And that time, my friends, may be now.